To talk more about the cell phone ban is New Jersey State Assemblywoman Rosie Begoli. Assemblywoman Begoli, welcome to New Jersey Mornings. Thanks for getting up with us this morning.
Good morning, Ken. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, you bet. Well, you joined Governor Murphy yesterday at Woodbury Junior Senior High School to highlight the cell phone ban there. What stood out to you most from that visit? Was it the students locking their phones in those yonder pouches he was just showing, or the feedback that you got from teachers and students about having fewer distractions so they could focus more on school?
I think it was the feedback that we got from the teachers and students. I am a superintendent principal of schools myself, and we do not allow cell phone use in our schools either. Um, as the governor said, my school puts the cell phones in bins. But to see how the students come in the morning, actually place their devices in a much bigger school district than where I work, and then have the feedback that they actually felt calmer as a result of having to do that, that the teachers felt that they could teach, that they were able to finally deliver a lesson without having to worry that there are cell phones being used in the classroom. One of the teachers described that the students would use apps to solve the math problems. And she felt like now the kids are actually engaging in mathematics and engaging in problem solving with one another, as opposed to getting an app, taking a picture of the problem, and having their cell phones get the answers for them. So listening to the teachers tell me how valuable the change has been to them as teachers in the classroom, but more so hearing how the students felt. They felt more emotionally and socially connected with their peers. They didn't feel that they were going to. One of them said, I'm so happy I don't have to worry about TikToks or dances happening in the hallway. Congestion, we can get to classes faster because there's no congestion of people checking their phones in the hallways between classes. The fact that they didn't have to worry about cyberbullying during school hours, the fact that they were calmer and they said they were getting better grades. All those things makes this piece of legislation so meaningful, because I can see already through the visits that we had yesterday the impact that not having those cell phones readily available is already having to students and teachers.
You know what's funny, Assemblywoman? I would have thought that students who are so addicted to their phones, because let's just face it, you're younger than me, clearly, but I wasn't raised with a phone in my hand. You probably weren't raised
I
with a
was
phone in your
not
hand, but
raised
these
with a
kids,
phone in my hand.
right, right. But these kids have been. So I thought that being like separating from their phone would have caused anxiety and there would have been a big amount of outrage. It is so refreshing to hear that the kids had a positive reaction. It actually, my heart is warm knowing that, wow, these kids are going to actually be able to learn to interact, because I'm sure you've encountered a lot of kids from like the Gen Z. They don't know how to look you in the eye. They're so used to having this, where they're just, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I get incensed when you're trying to talk to somebody and they just ignore you and they're just down it, because they're not paying attention to you when they're typing away on their phone. So it just must have been so refreshing for you too, being an educator and then being in the assembly to see that. Now, I know that you and Assemblyman Cody Miller are sponsoring a bill that would direct the State Department of Education to actually develop guidelines so that there's more
Yes.
consistent policies in schools. So what's the goal of that? Is it to have kind of a universal policy, or would you let each district or school develop their own method?
We would want each district, local control as an admin myself is very important. Not everything
Mm-hmm.
that maybe Woodbury is doing is going to fit my small little school district or fit a bigger high school like Patterson or Elizabeth. So we want the school districts, the intent is really for school districts to develop policies within the guidelines that are going to be handed down by the Department of Education for the use of cell phone during non-use of cell phone during instructional time. Um, for example, Woodbury allows the students after the bell to be able to take their phones and use their phones for extracurricular activities, or maybe, going on a field trip. They allowed the students to have their cell phones. I think that would give parents peace of mind if their child is on a field trip, that their child is able to contact them or connect with them. Certainly, we're not trying to say cell phones are 100% banned. It's an be all end all. But we are trying to say we need to have some procedures in place. We need some guidelines from the Department of Education in order to ensure that our students are getting the most benefit out of the time that they're sitting in the classroom with their teachers in the learning environment and also with their peers.
Would there be, say, exceptions? Say a child had a parent who was sick or was awaiting news, or a child who maybe has a medical condition and the parent needs to stay in touch. Would there be waivers granted for certain students to be able to keep their phones with them during the day?
I don't know if they would keep their cell phones with them. I'll give you a perfect example. I have a student in my school who is diabetic and monitors glucose
Mhm.
sugar through their cell phone. The cell phone is
Right.
kept in a pouch with the school nurse with a code, and the nurse is also monitoring the sound of that cell phone to ensure that the student is safe at all times. So if the student's glucose sugar goes down, the nurse is alerted immediately and is being able to help that student um, within seconds. So we have procedures in place for students who are medically fragile, for students who have, some students may have autism and this phone may be calming to them. If a student has an IEP, a 504 plan, or a medical plan, the law is not meant to interfere with the need of the student to use cell phones in a way that is appropriate for them. But
Right.
if I have to call mom to tell mom that I'm going to stay late because I have play practice, our land use of of our the landline, like it was available to me and you, Ken, is still available in the
Right.
main office.
Hey,
So
back in my day, it was two tin cans and a string. That's how we did it. Hello, who's
so
there?
students are always welcome. Yeah, we want them to be able to reach their parents. We don't want them to not
Right.
feel disconnected during the school day. But just like you and I did, or you, I don't know about the tin can. You don't, I don't think so. But but we're always
Well,
able to use maybe rotary dial.
right, right. Well,
No, but
I did
I
have
I
rotary
had
dial.
rotary dial,
Absolutely.
so
Okay.
yeah.
All
So
right. So true
students will still
confessions.
be able
We
to
can't lie.
contact their parents.
Our friends are watching. We can't lie about age that way, right? Now you mentioned you're a principal, you're a superintendent of East Newark, which is so refreshing because you can bring that perspective, and that experience to the legislature. And you mentioned that your district has its own cell phone ban using bins instead of pouches. So how has that experience as an educator affected the way that you came up with the legislation, and the differences that you may have seen in your students? You talked about how these students react, and just other students and other teachers at other schools who may be implementing this. What differences have you found in the different ways they're implementing this?
Well, that's the point why we decided to make this law just local control. My very small school district, the pouches are maybe not needed. We have a small amount of students, and it's easier for me to just put them in bins, and at the end of the day, have the students come and pick them up and keep them safe and locked. So that's easier for me. That works for me. I saw another school district where teachers had actual little lockers in the classroom that they can lock. Um, Whatever works for a school district is what we want them to use. What has impressed me the most is the openness of individuals across the state on both sides of the aisle wanting this legislation, feeling like this legislation has been very, very needed. Um, when I came home after the state of the state, my son said to me, I have two 16-year-old sons, and they said to me, "You're going to be the face of banning cell phones in New Jersey?" And then I said, "Yes, but everybody wants it." So it's
Right.
okay. Everybody wants
Yeah,
it, so it's
that's a good
okay.
thing. Well,
Parents
it's
definitely will have,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I said parents will definitely have some concerns, but I think the ultimate benefit outweighs the concerns that we may have as parents.
Yeah, when you and I'm sorry for stepping on you. I was having actually audio issues in my ear, but now it's been solved. It's just good to see that students are more engaged, and in some cases even checking out library books. Go figure. You mean that big room with books in it is getting used instead of scrolling on their phones? Stronger social bonds have been reported. A free mind. So ultimately, what's your vision on how the policy could literally reshape the whole school experience statewide? And also, if this legislation passes, will there be some funding so the schools can, say, invest in those pouches?
So the governor has committed $3 million in his state budget to competitive grants for schools to be able to try to afford, those schools that are interested. Some people say, well, $3 million, but $3 million goes a long way for schools that cannot possibly afford to implement this type of program. One of the biggest things that we deal with in education as a superintendent is that we end up with unfunded mandates. At least this mandate is
Hmm.
going to receive a little bit of funding through competitive grants. I'm happy to always see that some funding may be coming to us to implement guidelines and programs and services for students. But ultimately, I guess my vision and Cody's vision and Senator Moriarty's vision in supporting this bill is that we get back to the business of learning and the business of teaching, and that students are focused every single day on what matters most, and it's their education. So the intent of this law is to ensure that students are feeling comforted, safe, that they're socially engaged, that they are pulling those library books out of the library, that they're
Right.
feeling like they can have conversations again with their teachers, looking them in the eye, being prepared for that college life where those cell phones may not be readily available in those college, in their college campus classrooms. And we hope that it reaches that level too. But right now is getting back to the business of educating our students to the fullest and having them engaged in their learning.
I wish you were my principal. You're awesome. It's just so good to, so refreshing that you're doing this, and it just gives me a more positive outlook to the future, knowing that students will be more engaged. Focus on education during the day. Look, there's plenty of time for the phone later, but while you're in school, focus on education. And also mentioning the cyberbullying thing, that's a big deal. And to have that be basically the day be a cyberbully free time, that's wonderful. New Jersey State Assemblywoman Rosie Bagoli. Did I get your name right, please?
Yes, you did. You did. Thank you,
All
Ken.
right. Assemblywoman Bagoli, thank you so much for joining us. Please come back and let us know how this is working out. All right.
Would love to. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
You bet. Have a
Good day
great
to you.
day. Thank you. You bet.